We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history.
Every day that we live, that we affirm ourselves in reference to concerns and issues of our day, we make history. And we are glad to be with you on Faith on the Frontline on this, the 18th of October, 2013, as we continue to focus on the issues that are of concern to our communities. And today, once again, Reverend Campbell and I want to talk with you, our viewing and listening and streaming audience, to get a sense of what your concerns may be. Faith on the Frontline is an effort to highlight what community leaders from a faith perspective and community organizations and communities are doing to make an impact, to make a difference, to speak up and to speak out, to organize and to mobilize in ways that will create the difference that is required for human dignity and for respect to prevail amidst a tremendous effort to more or less commodify human existence itself, to put profits over people, and to raise the idol of things and money to a place where people only matter in as much as they are a part of a market-driven economy, a market-driven culture and society based on consumptionism and the insistence on repression and control. I'm glad to be in studio with my co-host, Reverend William Campbell, the pastor of Mount Gilead Missionary Baptist Church, who joins with me in so many of our efforts across the city and across the country as we recognize, in essence, that the Word of God, that the faith that we profess is more than a religion. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of thinking and growing and being. And want to thank all of you who are watching and listening for being a part of Faith on the Frontline today. Thank you so much. And we hope that you will call in and that you will talk with us today, that you would take this number down and take a moment to discuss with us or mention to us some of the concerns that you have. The number is 323-473-3100. Glad to be in studio with the Magic Meister, Mr. Van Eric, on the electronics and taking care of business and making it happen. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for that intro.
We appreciate you. We appreciate you.
Greetings and good morning.
Absolutely.
Certainly to Dr. Logan and to all of you, to Van, and to all of you who joined with us today. You used a term in your introductory statements, the commodifying of circumstances, and words are important to both you as well as to myself. And I think that's a significant term that we need to look at, because a part of the tragedy of what happens in our world today, and certainly that has impacted us as a people of a particular heritage, is the commodifying of humanity. Seeing people as things.
Yes, sir.
And seeing people from the perspective of what you can get out of them, rather than seeing a person as a person and being able to appreciate and respect that person. And I think that's a part of the tragedy. And it becomes so tragic particularly in terms of our history, because we were viewed as we were brought to the shores of this country.
We as African
Right,
Africans, as Africans,
as commodities. We were viewed as chattel property, and our only value and benefit was what we could produce and what could be garnered from our labors, and that was the attitude of those who were in positions of power. But it also infected, in too many instances, our own attitude toward ourselves.
Yes.
And so we end up deficient of a sense of appreciation for self. Our faith tradition is one that has at root to it the concept of love. And everything that we do has need to proceed from a perspective of love. Obviously, we begin with the fact that God loved us so much that he acted toward us even in the gift of his son. But love has attendant to it valuing another person to the degree that you invest in helping that person to be the best person that person can be, which means a radical sense of appreciation of that person. And my sense is that too many of the ills of our society trace back to our lack of valuing and appreciating others.
Sure.
And if I don't appreciate you, I end up diminishing my appreciation of myself. We were in a meeting on yesterday, as you know, with the Black and Brown clergy, and one of our pastors, Pastor Ragland, shared a devotional scripture, and in that scripture, he talked about Jesus looking at a woman and then saying to the man who was questioning her, "Do you see the woman?" And it raised up the Ralph Ellison imagery of the invisible man that too often we don't see. And obviously we're on the heels, on one hand, maybe still in the throes of the behavior of Congress with the shutdown and the potentiality for not extending the debt limit. But the tragedy that came forth from that was when they shut the government down, they did it without seeing the persons that they were hurting. Yeah. And then suddenly when they realized that veterans were being shut out, when they realized that children facing cancer treatment were being shut out, you begin to realize they didn't see the people whose lives they were desperately impacting because they had a commodity orientation toward the society. We're just making decisions about the money. But behind the money is the matter of the people.
It's decimation of communities. Yeah.
And so the question that your question or your comment raises for me, and the tragedy of what happened with Congress's behavior is, how do we value people when we look at issues, whether we're talking about the mass incarceration, whether we're talking about immigration, whether we're talking about police, a police mentality as well as brutality. I was recently driving along the streets, and the sheriffs had stopped, and then a sheriff came up and he just stopped right in the middle of the street without consideration of how it was affecting the cars behind him, which he did not need to do.
Wow.
Okay, after a few moments, then he pulled over. But it was without regard to the people who were following him. And so I talk about a police mentality as well as police brutality. And so the question that comes to me and that I would put before our audience is, what is your perspective of how we see one another as people, as human persons, and how do we interact with one another with a sense of value or a lack of value of one another?
Absolutely. I think too, as we grapple with what that question means, it takes us to an even personal level as to not just talk about how others or the Congress is treating the nation's citizens or how a particular corporation, but how do we interact with each
Absolutely.
other? I mean, especially when you talk about things like immigration reform, because we can tend to suggest, oh, that's another community, that's a different ethnicity, but that doesn't really affect us. But when we really consider the fact that we're all in a network of interconnectivity within our communities, within an economy, within a culture, within a city, a metropolitan area, that what is used to keep others down also affects our community.
Yes.
So we are inextricably bound,
Absolutely.
as Dr. King would say. There is no, when for instance, our Latino brothers and sisters who are forced to come here oftentimes because of the North Atlantic free trade, so-called free trade agreement,
Yes.
has decimated their indigenous economies in Mexico by driving down through an infusion of foreign, so-called foreign commodities into their markets, thereby driving down the value of their own markets and basically decimating farmers who can't compete with low prices that are coming in from outside of commodities coming in from outside the country. It puts a lot of people out of work, puts a lot of people off their land. It means that people have to move and migrate in order to find jobs. And where are they going to move? They have to move to the next strongest economy where they can find employment. Now, when they come, they're willing to work for lower wages. And when others are coming into our communities, into the communities where we live, and are willing to work for lower wages, it tends to drive the wages of that community down even further. So to villainize another community and not realize the game that's being played is to cut your own neck in terms of your own viability. The intelligent thing to do is to support the dignity of all individuals who need to earn a livable wage so that everybody working together can elevate together the wage quotient. To suppress others is to work in concert with your oppressor, as opposed to recognizing that we're stronger together. And that's why Faith on the Front Line is an effort. It's an expression of community and faith solidarity. It says that all human beings have worth.
Yes.
That all labor has worth.
And value.
And absolutely. And that for us to allow the divide and conquer game to ruin the potential for a strong, solid, unified community where all individuals and all sectors thrive, it doesn't mean that, for instance, if you take the fast food industry where workers are working for $8 an hour, and where McDonald's, just to pick out one particular vendor, made $5 billion.
Yes.
$5 billion. And the workers are simply asking for no less than $15 an hour, which would be a fraction if paid according to what they're requesting, would be a fraction of the profits.
Yes.
It wouldn't, and would probably even drive the profit margin even higher, because when workers are supported, paid well, and are excited about what they're doing, the quality and level of customer service
Yes.
just exceeds expectation.
Yes.
Which creates customer loyalty and customer buying and increases profit margins. So it's not an expense, it's an investment. Yeah. It's an incredible thing that when human beings are respected and treated well, that they reciprocate in kind in terms of productivity and viability.
And you create an environment. If people feel good,
Yeah.
the smile on their face, the joy in their heart reflects itself, and those who come into the place become infected with that same sense of joy and happiness and pleasure.
Sure.
Ultimately, our eating is about, dopamine, triggering the pleasure senses of our brain. Yeah. And so if you're in a happy space, then you tend to multiply
Certainly.
the effect.
Certainly.
And so you're absolutely right in terms of that. How we see and treat, value, and appreciate
Yes.
one another ultimately accrues to our own benefit
Sure.
as well as to the benefit of the others with whom we share. The other piece that we need to be sensitive to is, as we talk about immigration, we do affirm the legitimacy of what you said about what happened in Mexico and Central America. But then, in addition to recognizing that immigrants are also coming from Haiti,
Sure.
immigrants are also coming
Absolutely.
from Africa, immigrants are also coming from Asia, immigrants are also coming from Europe. So ultimately, we're dealing with all of humanity.
Absolutely.
And the question is, do we appreciate and value all of humanity? Am I my brother and my sister's keeper? Absolutely. You see? Because when I disdain my brother and my sister, I create a negative environment of appreciation for myself.
Absolutely. Now, if these issues are of concern and central to you, our listening and streaming audience, we'd like to invite you to join us in this conversation. Our objective is to hear from you. Reverend Campbell and I are preaching to the choir, so to speak, and we're actually choir members as well. So we're already in agreement, which is why we're on the same broadcast. I don't know if I would have somebody as a co-host who was in agreement with. Maybe I'll grow to that extent someday. Perhaps a third party to kind of provide a different perspective. But we want to encourage you. 323-473-3100. 473-3100. 323 is the first three digits of the number. 323-473-3100. Call in. If you're working at McDonald's or in the fast food industry, if you have a relative who is on lockdown and you have some concerns you'd like to share, or you'd like to laud or appreciate the faith community for its efforts, or even challenge us to step up to the plate and do some things that we need to do, radicalize the movement. If you are perhaps in San Francisco and you're being affected by the strike of BART workers who are trying to gain dignity and respect on the job, I think I heard or read that they were pretty close on some key salary and economic issues, but had some policy issues they needed to sort of nail down and straighten out. If you're going to, if you've enrolled for Obamacare, or if you have some questions about Obamacare, I want to encourage you to call in 323-473-3100. 323-473-3100. In a minute, we're going to go to a quick break. Give you a chance to dial in, write the number down. Maybe you're driving, you don't want to, try to dial while you're steering. Maybe you've come to a stop and you want to do that. 323-473-3100. Hold on with us. We'll be right back. But call in and talk to us. Reverend Campbell and I are looking forward to hearing from you and engaging you. If you're like me, it's lunchtime. And I want to thank our sponsors of the Faith on the Frontline radio broadcast in the form of Uncle Daryl's Cajun Cuisine at 2560 Lincoln Boulevard, Marina Del Rey. And also Doolin's on Crenshaw, that soul food restaurant owned by Greg Doolin, my good friend and brother, 4859 Crenshaw Boulevard, right here in Los Angeles, California. We want to thank them for being our special sponsors for Faith on the Frontline. I want to encourage all my Faith on the Frontline listeners, if you're hungry, if you want seafood, Uncle Daryl's Cajun Cuisine is the place to go, right there at 2560 Lincoln Boulevard on the corner of Lincoln and Washington Boulevard. And if you want some soul food and you know you're not on a diet but need to be, but you're willing to skip it just for a quick second, I'd encourage you to go to Doolin's right there on Crenshaw Boulevard, 4859. Greg will take care of you. His wonderful staff will smile at you and they will pile it on. I'm telling you, it's ridiculous. Good food, good cuisine. Thank you for being our sponsors. Faith on the Frontline family, go and support Uncle Daryl's and Doolin's. Thank you so much. Faith on the Frontline listeners, this is Dr. Lewis Logan, your executive producer, giving thanks and props to one of our sponsors.
United We Ship, 877-229-0577. That's 877-229-0577. Any shipping logistical needs you may have, whether it's a small letter or larger parcel or whatever it is you need, Michelle Israel and the professional staff of United We Ship will take care of all of your shipping needs. They're going toe-to-toe with the big boys, UPS and FedEx, and they're going to make it happen nationwide through their network of shipping logistics capacity. They are sponsors of Faith on the Frontline, and I highly recommend that you call Michelle Israel at 877-229-0577 for any of your shipping needs. They are special sponsors of Faith on the Frontline. He stepped out on faith, and let's step up and support him. Thank you.
Shadows of my life.
We're back. Faith on the Front Line, discussing, chopping up, and determining a foundation, a rubric through which we assess the matters that leaders and communities of faith approach advocacy, efforts for justice, and a more equitable environment where the human soul thrives, where human beings interact in ways that are mutually beneficial. I know this all sounds somewhat utopian, something that is out of reach, but were it not for such ideas, imagine where our society would be today if all of us were simply allowed, or if we didn't push back against the efforts that tried to dehumanize us. Where will we be as a culture and a community? We raise the questions because we care and we're concerned. We are compelled by virtue of a faith that draws us into an understanding that we are part of a human community that is made by God, all of us, and that there is that divinity in every human being, and that all of us have a purpose, all of us have a reason for being here, that there are no mistakes regardless of how you've come to be. And because of this, we feel strongly that that all of us have the capacity and the opportunity to live productive lives in viable relationships that accentuate and strengthen our sense of who we are. You can't be who you're supposed to be if I'm not who I'm supposed to be in community with you. It is about relationships.
Yeah. I was going to also say, Dr. Reverend Lewis, that's one of the many reasons why I believe God gave us human beings free will, so that we can, push back and voice what we believe in. We're not going to just stand there and just let each other walk on each other. If you understand what I mean by that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. 323-473-3100 is the call-in number, and maybe you get a little nervous when you call on the phone, so you might not want to do that. You can also email your comments or questions to praxis@gmail, praxis@gmail.com, or you can tweet me, if you will. Tweet me at Dr. Lewis Logan. Hashtag, I guess that's how it is, hashtag Dr. Lewis Logan. And I'd be glad to share your comments or questions on the line and on the air so that others would get the benefit of your musings and thoughts. This is the opportunity to express yourself, and that's why we're taking the time to get to know our community of faith who's maybe listening. It's wonderful to bring guests on, but we also want to take time to build relationships and to get a sense of who's listening and who has a heart for issues of faith as it relates to matters of justice and how we address those things. And so that's where we are. Tomorrow, I think, during the Taste of Soul, there will be several booths that will provide information for Obamacare. I'm understanding, according to recent reports, that there have been some glitches in the system, but they're working those out. It's none like any other new and emerging or growing entity or effort or initiative that in the theoretical is perfect, but in the practical has some specific issues that could not have been anticipated. So for those of you who are going on coveredcalifornia.org to get information, just be patient, keep trying. And if you have any, I believe there is a number you can call in to give comments or email to tell the administrators of the website and the web presence what hindrances and challenges you may be having. But I think you, for the most part, will do well. If you come to the Taste of Soul tomorrow, there will be at least 5 or 6 intake efforts. I think that, man, we're talking, wow, 100,000, 200,000 maybe.
Yes. Let me also reinforce, if I may, the importance of persistence. Because you have tragically a system that has not functioned as well as it might, but you don't want that to be treated as an excuse to disavow and eliminate the system that ultimately functions for our own good.
Sure.
And so it's important to be persistent, to press, so that it does function for our own good. We have too many people in our community who do not have health care. And when they don't have health care, it creates a multiplicity of problems. First of all, it means that they may be carrying around illness in their own body that they don't even know about. If they knew about it, it might be able to be treated, and they might come to a better stage of health. Secondly, we have this dependency on the emergency room, and with that dependency on the emergency room, it compromises, because the emergency room engage in a triage situation. They take the person who has the greatest need, so you may be waiting and waiting and waiting because you're relying on the emergency room, whereas if you had the benefit of the services of the Affordable Health Care Act, you could be seen in a more efficient manner. And so there's reason to be able to get it, and then you can have the benefit of being able to have tests and preventative care. And so we do want to urge it. And then thirdly, it allows those who are not interested in our community to use us as an excuse for not servicing our community. And so we cannot fall into that trap. And so it's important for us to press forward. Let me also say, even in terms of the process of what's going on in Congress, although the government reopened and although the this default was avoided, this is only a temporary kind of fix. We've got to stay diligent. We have to keep writing in to our senators and our congressional representatives, right to the Speaker of the House, right to the majority leader of the Senate, giving voice to your concern about them taking positive steps to address the interests of the people, because they will assume if we don't that we've gone to sleep and they can go back to business as usual, and we can't afford business as usual.
Yeah. And again, I guess we have to continue, and we're grateful for the efforts of faith communities around the country, particularly in D.C., that converged to raise that issue. We talked about the chaplain last week.
Yes.
Galen Brown, Barry Brown, was it? Black.
Barry Black.
Barry Black,
Barry
absolutely.
Black.
One of them colors, Barry Black. Brother Barry Black, who has been chaplain for many years, through prayer. It's interesting, through the opportunity of invocation, to, in the invocation, address the issue of enfranchisement and of parity, and being a voice for those who were not seen.
Yeah.
He's seen because he is the chaplain, but he had to represent those who are being shielded and shadowed by concrete, steel, and glass, and so stained glass for that matter. And so he's the prophet within, speaking against the injustices of those he's praying with. Imagine if he didn't even have a concern. And that, I think that's why, that's what faith on the front line means. It means that your faith directs what you say and how you behave, because you have to see every place where you go as an opportunity to represent and be a witness.
Absolutely, and I think we have reason to celebrate him. Here he is, a fully credentialed minister of the gospel. He's a rear admiral in the Navy, a man of learning and attainment, and with all of those things working for him, he is not insensitive to what biblically we call the Amorettes, the people of the land. And so God has his way of putting people in the right place at the right time to fulfill his purpose. And when I see someone like that, I realize God is still thinking about me.
Absolutely, man, and that makes all the difference in the world. And that's what it means when faith leaders, for instance, work with the immigration issue, with the mass incarceration, and police brutality, with education and the equalization of equitable environments for all children to thrive within, and especially when we're looking at the continual escalation of dropout rates, what you call the education or the primary to prison pipeline that's largely a part of the feeder process of the mass incarceration experience is just such a tragedy that we're compelled to, on behalf of our future generations, to say a word, to speak out.
Which goes back to the issue we also talked about last week, recognizing how important education is and encouraging our children to give of their best as they develop their skills and their abilities, and then encouraging parents to take primary responsibility for being involved in seeking to ensure that the best interests of your children are being honored by you being an advocate for quality education, and you're doing whatever is necessary to see to it that your son or your daughter is able to develop their intellectual gifts so that they might be the person that God created them with potentiality to be.
No question. Without that support and without that modeling before them, then they kind of fall through the cracks, because regardless of what peers may say, youth, young people, our sons and daughters still look to us for primary validation.
Absolutely.
And so whatever we hold in high esteem, whatever our priorities are adopted by them, whether they want to admit to it or not. And I imagine in their more prodigal years as burgeoning teenagers with hormones and all kinds of issues related to that they still look for the parental direction as a means of navigating those very tumultuous years of their existence. We want to, again, encourage those of you who are listening to call in. I think we're going to have to get some of our friends to call in too and kind of prime the pump. Prime the pump and get folk going. Or you can email me at praxis@gmail.com, and you can anonymously, if you will, state your case, register your concerns, but let us know you're out there listening. We need to get a sense that we are also registering to some extent with those of you who are tuning in to Faith on the Frontline. We want to certainly give the message that it's not enough to simply worship on Sunday, but we got to hit the streets during the week and every day. We got to be prepared.
In fact, our worship on Sunday should generate a kind of orientation toward involvement in the community. It fuels our sense of responsibility and involvement. And if we have a God who loves us enough to give us reason to want to come and respond worshipfully, then we ought to reflect that same sense of godliness in us as we give ourselves to others. To encourage and lift them up, and that means where people are being broken down, beaten down, stared down, mistreated, and abused, we have to step in and step up to honor our God as we become a blessing and a benefit to those who are the hurting among us.
Absolutely. That's part of what the October 22nd Coalition does. For more than 18 years now, they've been having annual events to highlight police brutality and repression. And this coming, the 22nd will be Tuesday or I think Tuesday. They will be having a series of actions and events, and we certainly want to support the October 22nd coalition that has based its name on an occurrence that took place several years ago, given a demonstration that turned into a real issue of tremendous brutality and unfortunate and unnecessary injury, but turning a negative into a positive by raising community awareness and by informing communities that not only awareness, who will become aware, but also become energized in a way that helps to resist the propensity to brutalize people, especially, and to profile them based on one's ethnicity and phenotype and such. So it's critical that these kinds of efforts, I want to encourage all faith leaders, pastors, imams, all clerics, rabbis to stand in agreement with community leaders who continue to decry the injustice of the police brutality. They want to understand that they will, across the country, will be similar kinds of actions. The one here in Los Angeles will start at 2:00 at Crenshaw at Slauson, and the march will begin at 3:00, and they'll rally at 4:30. I think that those of us who have that availability should certainly make it our business to participate and support the October 22nd, 18th Annual National Day of Protest to stop police brutality and repression. One of the major challenges with many municipalities is the militarization of the law enforcement industry. I mean, it's the law enforcement entities within our communities have become such military outposts and military operations and outfits.
Yeah. And it's tragic how the government is turning their used military products over to the police, products that they used in Vietnam and other areas of warfare. They no longer need them. Things have come to an end in Iraq. They're closely expectedly coming to an end in Afghanistan. And the tragedy, the good thing is that war is coming to an end, but the tragedy is that then these surplus weapons and artifacts of war are now being turned over to local police throughout the nation, and then they're beginning to operate. In Los Angeles, part of the tragedy of the legacy was William Parker, who was chief of police in the 60s, decided that he wanted to have Marines as police. And so the model for the development of LAPD under Police Chief Parker was to develop this military model. And then his successors continue to perpetuate it. And so then you have this model of not only militarization, but also occupation.
Wow.
And we've got to change
I'll
that.
never forget what that looked like.
Yes, the dialogue has to change so that they understand that they're people serving people, not people oppressing, containing, and holding in a posture of occupation. Yeah, and oppressing people. And so we do have to change that mindset and that orientation and that disposition.
Man, I'll never forget what military operation I witnessed during the closing days of the Occupy LA.
Yes.
It was an incredible kind of display of military might and tactical operations. There was the aerial operation of the helicopters. There were the strategic ground movement of riot-clad law enforcement officers with helmets and shields and batons and body armor and pads and and the boots.
Yes.
And you would have thought this was some kind of war movie or something. To see the manner in which they crept in from every direction, north, south, east, and west, cut off various corridors of ingress and egress. It's just incredible to see the tactical nature, and they actually recorded it as a way of being able to capture the operation and possibly even market the operation to other corporate entities that would possibly want to provide additional kinds of equipment and consultation and information to actually review the process and then go back and perfect it. So it's almost as if, again, there is the continual focus on corporate interests and repression of human beings.
They use it as a trading model, and that's tragic. The other issue that's in tandem with that we have to be concerned about is the resulting mass incarceration that's going on.
Oh, man, it's no question.
The fact that our prisons, our jails, and our prisons are flooding over, and now they're talking about contracting with these private prison corporations outside of the state to ship our children, our sons and daughters, to these prisons outside of the state, and then the thing that was brought to our attention, the fact that they enter these contracts where they commit to a quota. In terms of filling bed spaces. And so then they began to look at our sons and our daughters as, again, the commodification, as instruments to fill the beds and satisfy these contractual quotas. And that has to be brought to an end. Now, without question, we say all the time, we do have a responsibility to, as parents, as pastors, and as people in the community, to help our children do right. We don't want them to be persons who disregard one another, manifested in criminal behavior. So we stand over against criminal behavior, but we also have to stand over against how we act toward people under the license of protecting against criminal behavior.
Sure, absolutely. I think that you have to recognize the redemptive quality of giving someone, at least who has offended and who has been in a position of having offended and done something, the opportunity to redeem themselves, or to realize we all need a second chance. We've all had several chances, in a manner of speaking, regardless of what it is we've done. And given the fact that God values all of us, still loves all of us regardless of what we've done. So we have an obligation, I think, to reflect that in our policies and procedures. I want to kind of throw a piece out here. And again, our number is 323-473-3100. You can email me at praxis@gmail, PRAAXIS @gmail.com. Or you can send a question, tweet me, if you will, the Dr. Lewis Logan. Hashtag Dr. Lewis Logan. I think that's how it's done. I never sent it to myself, so I don't know. But I guess it's hashtag Dr. Lewis Logan. And I think that you will be able to send a tweet to me. Let me know you're following. Over this call, we'd love to talk to you. But there was something that occurred to me, and it was at one of the protest actions that I was a part of a couple of weekends ago on behalf of just immigration reform, and that is that at the same time that there is this so-called effort to pull forth a comprehensive immigration reform bill in the Congress, that there are record deportations happening simultaneously. And it just seems to me to be such a disingenuous paradox. It's just not that a paradox could be ingenuous, but just seems to be, it just seems to be double speak in a sense. You want just immigration, and I love my president now. Don't get me wrong, but I think that anybody who's in public service has the obligation to deal with the critical issues that the community is facing, and if you're deporting our immigrants, African and Latino and what have you, then you're pushing for just immigration reform. It seems to me you should do a moratorium on immigration deportations
Yes.
until you get your just immigration policies in
And that's where we have to be able to stand up and speak truth to power,
Yes.
Notwithstanding who is sitting in the seat of power. You know, even if our friend is sitting in the seat of power, if their behavior becomes contradictory, we have to stand up and speak truth.
Sure.
To power, and there's a sense of dependence upon it. Those of us who are in leadership know
Yes.
that we have a dependence upon those who are around us being able to give us feedback, being able to give us even critical feedback, not for the purpose of destroying, but for the purpose of correcting and lifting up and making us sound. And that's what you're talking about, the being engaged in contradictory purposes. And so we have to look at that and speak to it.
I was really encouraged by the fact that there were several community leaders and faith leaders who actually blocked an ICE bus leaving out of an area near San Francisco. They blocked the bus from actually leaving the ICE headquarters. I mean, these are places where people are held up, oftentimes non-threatening, non-violent immigrants whose families are torn apart because now the mother or father is being deported. It's a tearing apart of the family. And I wonder if there's another community that knows anything about how families can be torn apart and how mothers and fathers can be sort of deported or transferred from children. And, of course, you know that the children who remain become a citizen or a ward of the state, which means that increases the cost of the foster care system, which creates an even more critical issue because a lot of the workers are retiring, not being replaced. An overload of that system it's unsustainable. So those who kind of get lost through the cracks wind up offending in some way, and then they're in the criminal delivery industry. So it's like one cog or one wheel sort of feeds the other into a centrifugal spin of recidivism.
And basically what you're talking about is that when the parents are forced away, it creates a sense of detachment.
Sure.
And then the children are left, victimized in terms of that. Not too foreign from what happened with our ancestors who were in slavery and could be sold at a moment's notice at the way of the plantation owner, and then it left generations who were detached, and that's damaging to the psyche, and then you have this whole sense of distrust and hostility, and we create our own problems by virtue of what we do, and too often, again, not seeing but not seeing, and we do injury and damage to that child, to that family, and ultimately to the community itself.
No question. There's been a raging debate about the new movie 12 Years of Slavery and how it's the continual genre of looking back at time and a history of our dehumanized epistemology or our background with Django Unchained, the Lincoln movie, and recently The Butler, and now 12 Years a Slave. Is that there's this continual narrative of the same kind of horror and mistreatment of our foreparents, and perhaps while we're at the same time aghast and sick of seeing the same narrative over and over again, perhaps it is a haunting reminder of the fact that same system exists today in reference to what we're talking about with the immigration policy, that you're displacing, you're destroying families, you're separating mothers and fathers from their children. It's the same net effect, the same kind of alienation and destruction that has decimated this vital community family that's a part of our overall community family. So we can try to be heartless and detached, if you will, but invariably, as we said before, we are all intertwined. After your comment, Reb, we're going to take another little break, and then we'll come back.
Yeah, I'm thinking in terms of us understanding the implications. James Cone has written a book, The Cross and the Lynching Tree, in which he shows the parity between the cross of Calvary and the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, and then what happens in terms of lynching of black men, in particular black men and women in this country, and the fact that we have to understand the horrors and the implications of the horrors, so as to begin to critique and correct the errors.
All right. We'll be right back. We'll hold on, 323-473-3100, or email me at praxis@gmail, praxis @gmail.com, or send the brother a tweet, hashtag Dr. Lewis E. Logan, and I'll be glad to share your concerns or questions or comments on Faith on the Front Line. Be right back.
If you're like me, it's lunchtime. And I want to thank our sponsors of the Faith on the Frontline radio broadcast in the form of Uncle Daryl's Cajun Cuisine at 2560 Lincoln Boulevard, Marina Del Rey. And also Doolin's on Crenshaw, that soul food restaurant owned by Greg Doolin, my good friend and brother, 4859 Crenshaw Boulevard, right here in Los Angeles, California. We want to thank them for being our special sponsors for Faith on the Front Line. I want to encourage all my Faith on the Front Line listeners, if you're hungry, if you want seafood, Uncle Daryl's Cajun Cuisine is the place to go, right there at 2560 Lincoln Boulevard, on the corner of Lincoln and Washington Boulevard. And if you want some soul food and you know you're not on a diet but need to be, but you're willing to skip it just for a quick second, I'd encourage you to go to Doolin's right there on Crenshaw Boulevard, 4859. Greg will take care of you. His wonderful staff will smile at you and they will pile it on. I'm telling you, it's ridiculous. Good food, good cuisine. Thank you for being our sponsors. Faith on the Frontline family, go and support Uncle Daryl's and Doolin's. Thank you so much. Faith on the Frontline listeners, this is Dr. Lewis Logan, your executive producer, giving thanks and props to one of our sponsors, United We Ship, 877-229-0577. That's 877-229-0577. Any shipping logistical needs you may have, whether it's a small letter or larger parcel or whatever it is you need, Michelle Israel and the professional staff of United We Ship will take care of all of your shipping needs. They're going toe-to-toe with the big boys, UPS and FedEx, and they're going to make it happen nationwide through their network of shipping logistics capacity. They are sponsors of Faith on the Front Line, and I highly recommend that you call Michelle Israel at 877-229-0577 for any of your shipping needs. They are special sponsors of Faith on the Front Line. He stepped out on faith, and let's step up and support him. Thank you.
Hey y'all, I'm Shaquem Williams, and I'm the host of The Shock Factor here on LA Talk Live. We broadcast to the world every Friday at 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Live music, live performances, we're just live. Chef Momo, Life MC, Diana, and once again, your host, Shaquem Williams. So come join us every Friday here at LA Talk Live, the world-leading broadcasting internet radio station. The Shock Factor. The Shock Factor.
Join us on The Shock Factor.
Amidst the tenderness of this music and song is the shrill requiem of destruction in our communities. It's a dissonant note of the destructive. And yet, somehow the budding faith that pushes us beyond the is to what ought be requires that we begin with the affirmation of what should be and then seek to make it what it should be. And that's what Faith on the Frontline intends to do. And we hope that you are inspired by this effort to address those kinds of questions and those ideas, because it is often easy to become hopeless when you see so much happening, but there doesn't seem to be anyone doing anything. But we want to dispel that myth that there are people of faith, communities of conscience, that there are environments of ethical foundation and founding and grounding who that determine that things can and will be different because they should be different, because they can be different. And your conversations with Reverend Campbell and I, as we share with you in your similarity of spirit, will be encouraging to us, and reciprocally, we hope, to you as well. 323-473-3100 is the call-in number. Praxis at Gmail, Praxis at Gmail is the email address, and Dr. Lewis E. Logan is the hashtag Dr. Lewis E. Logan is our Twitter account. You can call in. Send a tweet. And again, I'd be happy to share that with our listening audience here today. I want to thank all of you for listening who have done so, and I hope that you will get to a Taste of Soul tomorrow, that you will not only circulate with the people, but you'll also access the enormous plethora of information sources, especially and in particular, Obamacare. We are trying to make it so that there are no excuses for being ignorant about Obamacare. You don't want to be like those who were interviewed on the television, on the radio, who were asked, what do you like better, Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act? And 9 out of 10 folk that were polled said, I like the Affordable Care Act. I think Obamacare is bad for the country. And then they only be told
that affordable health care and Obamacare are the
same thing.
The same thing. The formal name of the law that was passed,
Law of the Land,
Affordable Health Care Act.
That's right.
Because it reflected the leadership of the president of the country, it then came to have as its reference Obamacare. But Obamacare is the Affordable Health Care Act, and it's the law that the Congress passed, the president signed, and ultimately the Supreme Court affirmed as a resource to look after the health and well-being of the nation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, if there are events also that you certainly would want us to be a part of, or that you know of that you want placed on our calendar of events, we certainly would love to hear from you. We know, for instance, next week on the 22nd, the October 22nd Coalition Against Police Brutality and Repression will have a series of actions. They will meet at Crenshaw and Slauson at 2 o'clock. March begins at 3 o'clock and will be followed up by a rally and demonstration. And I'm certain and I'm hoping that they'll have some semblance of next steps. Next week, also Tuesday, there'll be some actions of the United Food and commercial food workers who will come together and converge against one of the major supermarkets in the country, in our city, in our state, that has a tendency to discriminate, against some of its workers, specifically those who are of the immigrant population, requiring, therefore, for, again, all of us to do more than talk about what's wrong, but to actually advocate and do something about it. And so that's going to be taking place Tuesday. There will be other actions for those who are fast food workers who've been retaliated against, on behalf of those who've been retaliated against, those who have decided to join the union or organize for a union. Solidarity have been, have suffered some retributive actions from their employers, the managers. perhaps prior to their actions of protest and uprising, they had maybe 30 or 35 hours a week. But because they stood up for themselves and spoke out, they've been reduced to 1 hour. 1 hour. So that there is this sense of this retribution and intimidation for even having the audacity to say, I need a livable wage. I got to be able to take care of my family. I can't work here full time and not be able to survive and live.
We have to stand up for what is right.
Mm-hmm. No question. We got to put our bodies on the line, be a living sacrifice. So I want to just to, set that forth as something that you can put on your calendars, that you can be a part of. Even if you don't feel comfortable saying anything, just your physical presence makes a difference. Just your presence, being there to be of support and to be a witness of what people are doing in their everyday struggles. We want to thank you all for listening to Faith on the Frontline today, and we hope that in the future that you'll feel comfortable calling in and emailing. I want to thank my co-host, Reverend William Campbell, for engaging in what I felt was a substantive and very strong conversation about the core issues and concerns that we have. Of course, my man, Mr. Van Eric, Van E-R-I to the C, is making it happen for you and for me. And we're grateful for his prowess and excellence in being able to handle the boards here as an engineer. And we hope that you have a fabulous weekend. Big props to Omega Psi brothers. I know I'm not in the room with an Omega brother, but nevertheless, it's okay.
Kappa Alpha Psi is still alive.
I see. But the dogs are at USC.
Uh-oh, do I have a couple of frat brothers in the house? Uh-oh, check it out.
But the dogs are at USC tomorrow, the 20th annual Young Men's Mentoring and Leadership effort. Will be all day from 10 to 3 at USC. You should drop through and give some love to some black men, some brothers of Omega Psi Phi who are taking time to sow into. I think we have maybe 300 or 400 young brothers beginning tomorrow at 8 o'clock at USC. Come on through. Taste the soul. See you there. Don't be trying to get all the shrimp because I'm going to be in line. And I'm going to be pushing brothers and sisters to get information about all the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. If you see me, come through and tell me you're listening to the broadcast and give me some feedback. Let me know what you think. And talk to us. If you see Reverend Campbell, if he's around, say hello to him as well. You see us on camera. We're not celebs, but we certainly would love to make a celebrity out of you. Yes. Until next week, don't just talk about it. Be about it.
Amen.
God bless you. All right.